Sia Novel 1. Chapter 1. I still remember the day I first met Stacy at Thompson's Coffee downtown. Her pink hair caught my attention right away. Not many people in our small town went for such bold choices. I was going over some bridge design plans when she walked in, ordered the sweetest drink on the menu, and sat at the table next to mine. We started talking after she noticed my engineering sketches. Her genuine curiosity about my work broke through my usual reserved nature. There was something refreshing about how she approached everything with such enthusiasm, even technical drawings that most people would find boring. Our differences became apparent pretty quickly. While I spent my days calculating load distributions and safety margins, Stacy bounced between freelance gigs, always chasing something new and exciting. But somehow, it worked. Her spontaneity balanced out my structured approach to life. It took her about 3 months to tell me about the furry thing. We were having dinner at my place when she pulled out her phone and showed me pictures from a convention she'd attended the previous year. I didn't get it at first. Adults dressing up as animal characters seemed strange to me. But seeing how her eyes lit up when she talked about her experiences, the friends she'd made, and the creativity involved, I couldn't dismiss something that clearly meant so much to her. When she mentioned wanting to get her own fursuit, I saw an opportunity to show support in a tangible way. I'm not great with words, but I understand numbers. I helped her set up a savings plan and quietly added to it whenever I could. Seeing her reaction when she finally ordered that custom bunny suit, all pastel colors and big blue eyes, made every penny worth it. Living in a small town meant Stacy had to travel for conventions. I understood her need to connect with that community, even if I didn't fully grasp it myself. So I helped with travel expenses when she needed it. It was worth it to see her come back energized and happy, sharing stories about her adventures in the bigger cities. Sometimes she'd try to explain the appeal, the freedom of becoming someone else for a while, the acceptance she found in that community. While I couldn't relate personally, I respected how much it meant to her. It was so different from my world. But maybe that's why we worked. We each had our own spaces where we could be ourselves while supporting each other's differences. I never thought I'd be the type to count dollars and cents in a relationship. That wasn't me. But after 6 months of supporting Stacy's convention trips, I found myself staring at my bank account more often than I'd like to admit. The numbers didn't lie. $3,000 here, $2,000 there. Each convention somehow cost more than the last. It's just the travel expenses getting higher, Stacy explained over breakfast, her pink hair falling across her face as she scrolled through another convention schedule. And you know how hotels are these days. I nodded, pushing my eggs around the plate. What started as a biannual thing had turned into monthly excursions. The calendar on our fridge was dotted with convention dates. FurCon in San Francisco, Anthro North in Seattle, PawFest in Chicago. The credit card statements told a different story than just travel and lodging. Room service charges for 4 people when she went alone, multiple restaurant bills at odd hours, shopping sprees at stores I'd never heard of. When I brought it up, Stacy would wave it off. Oh, I split costs with other fursuiters. It's easier to just put it on one card and they pay me back in cash. But the cash never seemed to materialize in our account. Things shifted subtly after her 3rd convention in 2 months. She'd come home different, distracted, always on her phone. I caught glimpses of message notifications lighting up her screen at dinner, but she'd quickly flip it face down. Just convention planning stuff, she'd say, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. One evening, I walked into her living room and Stacy quickly switched tabs on her laptop. Before the screen changed, I caught a glimpse of a private chat room. She'd never mentioned those before. "What's new in the furry world?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Oh, you know, same old. He wouldn't really get it. She laughed, but it felt hollow. It's furry stuff. It became her go-to response. Everything was furry stuff I wouldn't understand. The late-night phone calls, the private messages, the mysterious Venmo charges. Each question I asked was deflected with a reminder of how I wasn't part of that world. I watched her pack for another convention, her excitement palpable as she carefully folded her fursuit. She used to share every detail of these trips, the panels she'd attend, the people she'd meet. Now her plans were vague, wrapped in generalities. "How long is this one again?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. 4 days. Maybe 5 if the closing ceremony runs late. She didn't look up from her suitcase. "I thought it was a 3-day convention." "There's pre-con stuff. Meeting up with friends." She zipped up her bag with finality. "You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was anymore. Not really. I never meant to invade her privacy. The thought had gnawed at me for weeks, but I'd always pushed it away, telling myself I was being paranoid. That morning, though, something felt different. Maybe it was how Stacy had jumped when her phone buzzed during breakfast, or how she'd angled the screen away from me. The sound of running water from our bathroom provided a steady backdrop as I sat at her desk. Her laptop was open, social media tab still active. My hands trembled as I clicked through her messages. There he was. Rex. The name appeared everywhere, peppered through her conversations like confetti. The first few messages seemed innocent enough, convention plans, fursuit photos, casual chatter, but as I scrolled up, my stomach turned to ice. They shared private jokes about their special moments at conventions, details about hotel rooms, about things they'd done together. Those small-town normies wouldn't understand. That was Stacy, clearly talking about me. "Alex is sweet, but so vanilla. With you, I can be truly myself." Rex's response made me feel sick. Bet he doesn't know how wild his little bunny gets when she's with her big bad wolf. Photos loaded on the screen. Stacy, wearing nothing but that pastel bunny mask I'd helped her pay for. The mask I'd watched her unwrap with such joy, the one she'd said represented her true self. Now it was being used in ways that made my vision blur. The bank statements suddenly made sense. Those split costs for hotel rooms, the extra nights she'd stayed after conventions, the cash withdrawals that never quite added up. Every transaction now felt like a fresh betrayal, each one matching up with dates in their message history. They'd even met up last month when she'd told me she was visiting her parents. The evidence was right there. Photos of them together at some furry meetup. His wolf suit next to her bunny one. In the next photo, the suits were off. Well, mostly off. My hands shook as I kept scrolling, each message revealing more of their relationship. They shared playlists, inside jokes, pet names, an entire relationship built in parallel to ours, hidden in plain sight behind cartoon avatars and furry terminology I'd never fully understood. The shower water stopped running. I heard Stacy humming, the bathroom door creaking, but I couldn't move. My eyes were fixed on one particular message thread from just yesterday. "Miss you already, my sexy bunny. Can't wait for next month's con. Your guy still clueless?" As always, I've already bought the tickets, told him it's just a regular convention. He's even helping pay for it. The bathroom door opened. Stacy's footsteps padded down the hall. For 2 days, I barely spoke to her. Every time she tried to initiate conversation, I gave short, clipped responses. How could I look at her the same way? Each time she mentioned convention expenses or showed me pictures of her fursuit activities, my stomach churned, knowing the truth behind them. On the 3rd day, I couldn't take it anymore. We were having dinner, and she was chattering about an upcoming convention in Seattle. I need to talk to you about something. My voice came out harder than intended. She looked up from her plate, fork frozen halfway to her mouth. What's wrong? I know about Rex. The color drained from her face. For a moment, just a fleeting second, guilt flashed in her eyes before being replaced with indignation. What do you mean? I saw the messages, Stacy. The photos. Everything. She slammed her fork down. You went through my phone? How dare you? Don't turn this around on me. You've been using my account, my money, to fund your little escapades with him. You're being ridiculous. Rex is just a friend from the community. You wouldn't understand. Stop. Just stop. My hands were shaking. I saw the hotel bookings, the intimate messages, the plans you made while I was helping pay for these trips. That's different. The furry community has its own dynamics. You're just too close-minded to. Close-minded? I laughed bitterly. I've supported your interests from day one. I never judged, never questioned. I helped fund your conventions because I thought it made you happy. And this is how you repay that trust? She stood up, chair scraping against the floor. You had no right to invade my privacy. This is exactly why I couldn't be honest with you. You don't understand us. You're just a stuck-up normie. No, I understand perfectly now. I understand that I can't trust you. I understand that this relationship won't work. Her expression shifted from anger to panic. Alex, please, you're overreacting. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. She stormed to our bedroom, crying, and I heard drawers being yanked open, clothes being thrown into bags. When she emerged, her mascara was smeared all over her face. You'll regret this, she spat, grabbing her purse. You're throwing away something so special because you're just too small-minded. The door slammed behind her. I sat in the sudden silence, numb. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a purchase notification. A plane ticket to Portland, Rex's city, charged to my credit card. Through a mutual friend, I learned she'd gone straight to him. It hurt even more, knowing she'd just ditched me for him right away. She was still using my card, probably betting I wouldn't involve the police over this. And she was right. Yes, calling the cops wasn't one of my methods. For starters, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. With a few taps, I blocked the card. It was just the first step in my plan. Looking at the blocked card confirmation screen, I felt a cold resolve settle over me. The hurt was still there, raw and throbbing, but now there was something else too. Determination. I had supported her lies long enough. Now it was time for the truth to come out. Couple days later, I sat in my car outside her parents' house, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The folder on the passenger seat contained everything. Screenshots of messages between her and Rex, bank statements, photos from conventions she thought I'd never see. I collected everything before the confrontation. My hands were shaking, but not from anger anymore. This was different. This was calculated. I'd always gotten along well with her parents. They saw me as the stable, responsible influence in Stacy's life. If they only knew what their daughter had been up to behind everyone's backs. The thought of their reaction gave me a strange sense of satisfaction. Mrs. Monroe answered the door with her usual warm smile. Alex! What a lovely surprise! I figured Stacy didn't tell them anything yet. She ushered me into their immaculate living room, the same one where we'd spent countless Sunday dinners. The walls were lined with family photos and religious artwork. The irony wasn't lost on me. Would you like some coffee? Mr. Monroe called from his recliner, setting aside his book. No, thank you. I actually need to discuss something important about Stacy. I pulled out the folder, my voice steadier than I expected. For the next hour, I methodically laid out everything. The secret furry lifestyle she'd hidden from them for years, the conventions, the elaborate costumes she spent thousands on. Their faces grew increasingly pale as I showed them photos of her in a pastel bunny suit, dancing at conventions. Then came the financial records, the hotel receipts, the messages with Rex. Mrs. Monroe's hand flew to her mouth when she saw the intimate messages between Stacy and Rex. "This can't be our daughter," she whispered. These devil costumes, these lifestyle." Mr. Monroe's face had turned from shock to rage. "Ranting around in animal suits, living in sin. We raised her better than this." His hands trembled as he looked through more photos. This is an abomination. I found it kind of funny that the whole furry thing seemed to upset them more than the cheating part of it. "She's been lying to everyone," I said quietly. "I thought you deserved to know the truth about your daughter." "This ends now," Mr. Monroe declared, his voice shaking. "No daughter of mine will live like this. We'll cut her off completely until she repents and leaves this perverted lifestyle behind." Mrs. Monroe was openly weeping now, clutching her cross necklace. "How could she do this to us? To you? You've been nothing but good to her, Alex, and you were always like a son to us. I wish you really were our son, instead of her." I watched their world crumble around them, just as mine had days before. But unlike my situation, their brutal reaction would have lasting consequences for Stacy. She'd lost not just me, but her entire backup support system in one fell swoop. As I drove home that evening, I felt a hollow victory. I'd done exactly what I'd set out to do: expose every secret she'd kept buried. Her carefully constructed double life had collapsed like a house of cards. And somewhere across town, her phone was probably already blowing up with messages from her devastated parents. Through my mutual friend Mark, another furry I'd met through Stacy, who let me use his popular Twitter account, I was ready to strike her from another angle. My hands trembled as I typed out the story, attaching screenshots of bank statements, hotel receipts, and snippets of conversations between Stacy and Rex. The evidence was damning. Within hours, the post exploded across furry Twitter. People I'd never met began sharing their own stories about Stacy's behavior at conventions. Someone posted a video of her grinding against another fursuiter at a convention dance while wearing her signature pastel bunny suit, the one I'd helped pay for. Another shared screenshots of her flirting in convention group chats, promising to meet up with multiple people in her hotel room. The comments were brutal. Her formerly cute fursuit persona became the subject of cruel memes. People edited her convention photos with savage captions about gold digging and infidelity. The community that had once celebrated her creativity now tore her apart. Rex's reaction was swift. He posted a long thread distancing himself from her, claiming she'd manipulated and lied to him too, called her toxic and unstable, said he never knew she was in a relationship. His followers ate it up, praising him for speaking his truth, while piling more hate on Stacy. A week later, I was sent a link to a listing on a furry marketplace. Her precious bunny suit up for sale at a small portion of its original value. The comments were merciless. "Isn't this that cheater's suit? Probably needs fumigation. Wonder how many people she's screwed while wearing it. Ew. No one wants your dirty suit. It's almost just as filthy as you." She took down the listing within hours. Through Mark, I learned she'd been kicked out of Rex's place after his public denouncement. Her perfectly curated furry life was crumbling, post by post, share by share. The same community that had given her the freedom to express herself now trapped her in a cage of her own making. I felt hollow watching it unfold. This wasn't justice. It was a digital mob tearing someone apart. But I couldn't stop it now, even if I wanted to. And I wasn't sure I wanted that. To be honest, I was enjoying it. Now the truth had taken on a life of its own. I was picking up groceries at Marshall's when I saw her. The pink hair that once drew me to her was gone, replaced by a mousy brown that seemed to match her defeated posture. She stood in the produce section, comparing prices on discount vegetables. The designer clothes were gone too, replaced by plain jeans and a worn sweater. Our eyes met across the store. For a moment, neither of us moved. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows under her eyes, highlighting how tired she looked. She clutched her basket tighter, the plastic handles creaking. "Alex," her voice cracked as she approached. "I didn't expect to see you here." The basket, in my hands, suddenly felt heavy. The last time we spoke, she'd been screaming about how I'd ruined her life. Now, she could barely meet my eyes. "I heard you're back in town," I said, keeping my voice neutral. The gossip had spread fast. Stacy Monroe, living above Wong's laundromat, working minimum-wage jobs to scrape by. "Yeah, I had to leave the scene for a while," she shifted uncomfortably. "Everything just got too intense after, A group of teenage girls walked past us, giggling and whispering. I caught fragments of Furry and Cheater in their hushed voices. Stacy's shoulders hunched further. "I sold the suit," she said quietly. "Got barely anything for it. No one wants to buy from someone with my reputation now." Part of me felt satisfaction seeing her brought low like this. But watching her stand there, a shadow of her former self, that satisfaction felt hollow. "Alex, I've been thinking. About us. About everything." She took a shaky breath. "I know I messed up, but maybe we could try again? Start fresh?" The old Stacy would have never been this desperate. The old Stacy wouldn't have been caught dead in discount clothes, asking for second chances in a grocery store. "No." The word came out firm, final. "What's done is done, Stacy." "But you didn't just cheat. You lied, you stole, you used me." Each word landed like a blow. "There's no coming back from that." Her eyes welled up with tears. For a moment, I remembered how I used to comfort her when she cried. Now I just felt numb. "My parents won't even talk to me," she whispered. "Everyone in this town thinks I'm a joke. I have nothing left." "That was your choice," I said, turning away. "You chose Rex. You chose that life. Now you get to live with those choices." I left her standing there in the produce aisle, surrounded by whispers and stares, clutching her basket of discount vegetables. The girl I'd fallen in love with was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. And I had no interest in knowing this new version of Stacy. Next morning, I checked my phone to find 17 new messages from Stacy, each one more desperate than the last. "Please talk to me. I made a terrible mistake. I'll do anything to fix this." I tossed the phone aside and dragged myself to the shower, letting the hot water wash over me. The doorbell rang just as I finished getting dressed. Through the peephole, I saw her. My stomach twisted into knots. Stacy stood there, mascara streaked down her face, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Alex, please, just 5 minutes." Her voice cracked. "That's all I'm asking for." I opened the door but kept the chain on. Go home, Stacy." "This is my home too." She tried to reach through the gap, but I stepped back. "I'll quit the conventions. No more fursuits. Whatever you want." I entertained the idea for a moment, imagining taking her back, using her for a bit, and then discarding her onto the streets again, to make it even worse for her, but I wasn't going to bother. Should have thought about that before spending our money on hotel rooms with Rex. She flinched at his name. It meant nothing. "You're the one I love." I shut the door. Her fists pounded against it as she begged and sobbed. After 10 minutes, she finally left. But she came back the next day, and the next, sometimes waiting in her car outside my building, sometimes leaving tear-stained notes under my door, each time spinning the same story about how she'd changed, how she'd do anything to earn my trust back. I never responded, just collected her notes and tossed them straight in the trash, changed my phone number, blocked her on every platform. The final straw came when I found her sitting on my doorstep one morning, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she'd been there all night. "You need to stop this," I told her firmly. "I won't stop until you hear me out." She scrambled to her feet. "What we had was real. I know I messed up, but the next time I see you here, I'm calling the police." My voice was ice cold. "I'll file for harassment charges. Is that what you want?" Her face crumpled. "Alex, please." "We're done, Stacy. It's over. Go live your furry fantasy with Rex or whoever else. Just leave me out of it." She opened her mouth to argue, but something in my expression must have finally gotten through. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. Without another word, she turned and walked away. That was the last time I saw her. At my door, the messages stopped too. The silence that followed felt both like a relief and somehow harder to bear than her desperate pleas had been. 6 months after I last saw Stacy, the anger that used to consume me has faded into something quieter. Acceptance, maybe. I deleted all our old photos, changed my morning coffee spot, and threw myself into work. The promotion to lead engineer came through, bringing new challenges that kept my mind occupied. I met Sarah at a friend's barbecue last month. She's an architect, brilliant and genuine. There's something refreshing about her straightforward nature, no hidden agendas, no elaborate personas. Just honest conversations over wine about building codes and structural design. When she laughs, it reaches her eyes. Through mutual friends, I heard Stacy lost her apartment and moved back in with her parents. Her once vibrant social media presence went dark after the furry community turned on her. The designer clothes and weekend trips are gone. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if I went too far, but then I remember the betrayal, the messages, the lies, the money she stole from our joint account. Sarah doesn't know about Stacy. Not because I'm hiding anything, but because that chapter feels firmly closed now. When I drive past Thompson's Coffee, I no longer think about pink hair and stolen glances. Instead, I think about deadlines and project specs, about Sarah's latest renovation plans, about the future. Last week, Mark mentioned seeing Stacy working at a local diner. Her hair was still brown and mousy. He said she looked different, smaller somehow, like the spotlight she once commanded had dimmed. The furry conventions continued without her, her former friends posting photos and inside jokes she's no longer part of. I feel lighter now. The weight of suspicion and hurt has lifted, replaced by the simple pleasure of living honestly. Stacy made her choices, and now she's living with them. Meanwhile, I've rebuilt my life brick by brick, each day more solid than the last. The revenge doesn't taste sweet anymore. It just tastes like nothing at all. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed the story, remember to like, subscribe, and comment on the video for more stories like this. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. If you have any similar stories to share, leave them in the comments and we'll make sure to bring them to life. Thanks for watching.